Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation hosted by Nutrition International. It is my great honor to be your event moderator today. My name is Leona Liu van Louvren, and I am the Director of External Relations in Asia for Nutrition International. For over 3 decades, Nutrition International has remained at the forefront of delivering cost-effective and impactful nutrition programming globally. Since our founding in 1992, we have reached over 1 billion people across 60 countries. Today's topic is not only important, but urgent. The world is currently off track to meet all 6 of the World Health Assembly Global Nutrition Targets. And with less than a year to go to 2025, data indicates that these targets will not be reached globally or at country level. This is alarming, and we need to take swift action. We will be hearing from an esteemed panel of global thought leaders on how the nutrition community can align and mobilize. Our panelists today include Joel Spicer, President and CEO of Nutrition International, Vivian Onano, an award-winning social entrepreneur and founder-director of the Leading Light Initiative, Dr. Francesco Branca, Director of the Department of Nutrition and Food Safety at the World Health Organization, and Monsieur Brioux-Pont, France's Special Envoy and Secretary General for the upcoming Nutrition for Growth Summit in 2025 in Paris. Today's event will also feature the launch of a brand new online dashboard and data set from Nutrition International that quantifies the costs of stalled nutrition progress. Dr. Dylan Walters, Director of the Health Economics Unit at Nutrition International, and Sakshi Jain, our Senior Research Analyst, will be giving a live demo of this exciting new tool. Now, just one quick housekeeping item before we proceed. While we won't have enough time for live questions for our panelists, please type any comments or questions you have for them in the Q&A function. Our team will respond to as many questions as possible, and they'll be monitoring this thread. And if any questions remain unanswered, we will reach out to you after the event concludes with further responses. Now, without any further ado, I'm delighted to turn it over to Joel Spicer, President and CEO of Nutrition International, for our opening remarks. Joel, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Leona. I'd like to welcome everybody here to our webinar, and also just to say a big vote of thanks to Francesco, Vivian, Brioux as well. There's 3 important speakers with 3 powerful voices. Now, less than a week ago, The Economist did an in-depth feature on nutrition. It was great. If you haven't seen it, I encourage all of you to read it. It's focused. It talks about global nutrition projections and targets, and it's totally relevant for today's discussion. Amongst the many gems in that article, they note that despite some examples of progress, the overall pace of improvement in nutrition has slowed in the last 10 years. Now, The Economist projects 3 scenarios about where we're going to be in the year 2050, depending on the choices we make now. The first scenario is that if the rates of stunting and anemia stay as they are, by 2050, 2 out of every 3 children born on the planet will be born in countries that have stunting rates of 20% or more, and that 1 out of every 4 children will actually be stunted. The second scenario is that if rates fall at the same slow rate as they've been falling, by 2050, about 1 in every 6 children will be stunted. But anemia among pregnant women will still impact almost 1 out of every 3. That's staggering. Now, the third scenario, by contrast, says that if we simply double the rate of progress countries have been making against these targets at national level, by 2050, we will have cut anemia by more than 30% and stunting by 80%. Now, these are wildly different possibilities for our future. And the hopeful scenario, that's the one we've got to move towards with much greater urgency. That's what's possible if we choose to make it happen. So we know already that the status quo and the cost of inaction in nutrition is massive. And that's what we're here to talk about today. But we're also here to put together and unpack the opportunity we have in front of us to flip the script in the next 12 months in particular, but also on the road to the SDG deadline in 2030. So how do we change the trajectory we're on? Here are some opportunities that make me hopeful. So Francesco and the World Health Organization are working on an updated set of global nutrition targets that will be extended until 2030. They're going to be formalized next year in May and adopted by the World Health Assembly. Now think about that. A set of globally agreed, time-bound goals committed to by all countries is a unique rallying point for action in the nutrition community, and one we have to focus on much more. Now, with apologies if this is too blunt, but in my view, the reason why we haven't made as much progress as we could have on nutrition, the reason why there are more stunted children in Africa each year, and the reason why the burden of anemia among women of reproductive age is even greater now by 50 million women additional than when we set the targets in the first place in 2012. It's not just because the world got harder. It's because we lost sight of the fact that global nutrition targets are the most important, measurable, unifying factor in our efforts to end malnutrition. They are our signposts of progress. You know, a journey with no markers or milestones of progress is more like walking in a circle than heading towards a brighter future. We lost focus on the global nutrition targets, on investing according to evidence, and on pushing to make measurable change for those that need it most. And we can't afford to do that again. We should define our effectiveness in nutrition by the progress countries make against the global nutrition targets. That means we have to hold nutrition high, always. We've got to make it a political issue because ending malnutrition is a political choice. And it means we've got to focus on putting the best things first. That means on scaling up those interventions and approaches that are evidence-based, low cost, and high impact first. We can do other things, but we have to scale those things up first. Now, Francesco is going to walk us through where we are in the global targets process and why it matters. And the reason I'm hopeful in nutrition is because I am certain that faster progress is possible. Now, today we're launching the Cost of Inaction Tool because we believe that when countries have clear data-driven analysis of how much they're losing because of malnutrition in terms of health, human capital, and economic productivity, that they will make stronger, more ambitious policy and investment choices that generate impact, not 20 years from now, but right now, while millions of their citizens' lives hang in the balance. We also wanted to be able to engage countries to highlight how they might benefit economically in human capital terms and in health by being more ambitious in their efforts. And we hope to use the Cost of Inaction tool to support country commitment making as well. One more reason for hope is that we also have some moments coming up that if we use them correctly, can help put in place the conditions for faster progress in nutrition. Here are a few. I know there are more though. You know, sometime in the fall, the World Bank will release its next investment framework for nutrition, unpacking the funding that will be required to move forward. The Sun Global Gathering is 4 months away, and that's an opportunity for the nutrition community to align, focus, prepare commitments, and lean in around the global targets and how to get the investments countries need. We also have the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris in March. And that's where we hope that commitments on making faster progress against the WHA targets will be announced in a way that will generate a new level of momentum. And Briouk will tell us more about how N4G is shaping up. So if we line these things up and refocus on the global nutrition targets, there is every reason to believe that we can make much faster progress in nutrition in the next 5 years and beyond. Thanks very much. Back to you, Leona.
Thank you so much, Joel. And I really appreciate that despite some of the dire figures, that we can choose a trajectory of hope, as you say, and use these watershed moments coming up this year and beyond to really mobilize the community. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Dylan Walters, Director of the Health Economics Unit at Nutrition International, to introduce us to the brand new Cost of Inaction economic modeling tool you just talked about, Joel, which can really help inform nutrition policy and investment decisions on global nutrition targets. Over to you, Dylan.
Thank you very much, Leona, for the introduction. I'll just take a moment to share my presentation. Okay. Can you confirm that you can see my slides?
Yes, Dylan, we can see them clearly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So it's my pleasure to speak to you today about the new NI Cost of Inaction Tool and the topic of the health, human capital, and economic benefits of investing in reaching the global nutrition targets. I will be joined at the end by my colleague Sakshi Jain, who led the development of the tool for a live demonstration. As you may know, in 2012, the World Health Assembly established the 6 global nutrition targets on stunting in children, anemia in women, low birth weight, childhood overweight, breastfeeding, and wasting. As Joel mentioned, progress has been slow towards investing in maternal and child nutrition. The world and many countries are off track to meet several of the global nutrition targets by 2025. And as we are fast approaching the deadline, the WHO is now leading the consultative process for renewing the targets to 2030. Given that data can be so powerful for this process and for governments undergoing planning and prioritization processes, Nutrition International and our Health Economics Unit has developed open access evidence-based modeling tools to help estimate the context-specific costs of not investing in the prevention of stunting, anemia, low birth weight, and suboptimal breastfeeding. We want to ensure that the health of women, newborns, and children are at the forefront of the development agenda. These targets represent global societal challenges that cannot be ignored. This new NI Cost of Inaction tool forms a suite of easy-to-use evidence-based modeling tools for nutrition advocacy and decision-making, including the NI MMS cost-benefit tool developed in 2019 and the Cost of Not Breastfeeding tool developed in partnership with Alive and Thrive. Now, for this new tool, the objective of the Cost of Inaction tool is to estimate the health, human capital, and economic cost of not investing in nutrition for children under 5 and women of reproductive age to support advocacy, policy decisions, and investments. It is linked to the WHA targets on stunting, anemia, and low birth weight. And it includes data at the global, regional, and national level for over 140 geographies, including some regional economic cooperation groups. The primary audience of interest are national policymakers, advocates, donors, but all are welcome to explore the tool. The tool can rapidly generate estimates for various indicators on the health, human capital, and economic costs for each target separately, plus a combined economic cost as well. Similar indicators for breastfeeding target can be found on the independent cost of not breastfeeding tool. In terms of key findings from our analysis, at the global level, the cost of inaction analysis finds that every year stunting, anemia, and low birth weight results in at least 1.3 million child deaths and potential human capital losses of over 300 million IQ points and 49 million years of education lost. That is a significant, irreversible human capital deficit born every single year. Together, the combined economic impact of the lost workforce due to preventable mortality, as well as productivity and cognitive losses, are estimated to be conservatively equal to at least $750 billion US per year, which is equivalent to 1% of global income. This is roughly equivalent to the gross national income of Switzerland. Imagine the effect of adding the income and productivity of one of the most successful countries in the world to the vulnerable families and communities affected by undernutrition. While the global figures are eye-opening, in my opinion, the real value of the cost of inaction tool is the capability to generate estimates at the regional and national level for over 140 geographies by target separately or combined. The tool and results are available in French and in English. And at these levels, the data can tell a more interesting story. When we look at the regional level, we see variation in the economic impact by region and across the targets. For example, the total economic cost of stunting, anemia, and low birth weight is estimated to be at least 1.2% of GNI in Latin America, over 3% in South Asia, and over 6%, nearly 7% in sub-Saharan Africa. At the national level, the variation in human capital and economic impact is even greater. It is also clear from the results that scaling up financing and intervention coverage beyond the median trend line, and even the trend line of the highest performing quintile of countries, is needed to achieve these targets, especially in anemia and low birth weight. For some purposes, it's important to present these figures not as costs, but as potential benefits of reaching the targets. In our additional analysis, we have found that globally, more than $335 billion in economic benefits can be generated each year by scaling nutrition interventions to achieve the proposed WHA targets by 2030. That's over 1.7 trillion over a 5-year period leading to 2030. At the national level, this translates to remarkable potential for economic gains in key high-burden countries. For example, reaching the target for stunting in Nigeria could generate economic gains of $23 billion annually, or reaching the target for anemia in women in India alone could generate economic gains of $4 billion annually. Reaching the target for low birth weight in Indonesia could generate economic gains of over $1 billion annually as well. For breastfeeding in Mexico, reaching the target could generate economic gains of over $2 billion as well. It's important to also recognize that there exist low-cost, high-impact interventions for achieving these targets as outlined in the investment framework for nutrition. Having these data points is powerful, but as many of you know, it takes action to lead to change. From experience, we've seen data points from these analytical tools be used by governments, politicians, advocacy groups, donors, NGOs, multilateral agencies, and development banks for various key purposes, including informing global and national policy dialogue and guideline development, empowering civil society advocacy groups and the media with impactful data for campaigns, gaining national political and legislative support, and strengthening investment cases by governments and lending by multilateral development banks or regional economic cooperation groups. These are just a few of the many creative ways and powerful ways that these data points can be used by our partners, governments, and the nutrition community. We encourage you in the audience and your allies to visit the Cost of Inaction Tool online and the other tools available. They can be used. You can visit us online at this link to use the tool and print out national and regional results, to read our journal article just published yesterday in Health Policy and Planning and listen to the accompanying podcast, to access our regional briefs for Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and to get in touch for further technical support. So in conclusion, it is clear from our analysis that the potential health, human capital, and economic benefits that could be gained by taking action, investing, and scaling nutrition interventions to achieve the proposed WHA targets by 2030 remain significant. Country and regional estimates on the cost of inaction are now available to support policy development, advocacy, legislation, and investments for scaling priority nutrition interventions that are good value for money. NI can support governments and multilateral development banks with additional analysis on the health, human capital, and economic benefits of achieving the WHA targets, national targets, or N4G commitments, or by developing costed nutrition action plans, policy options for countries, or advanced modeling and cost-benefit analysis of nutrition interventions that are needed to advance nutrition policy. I want to say thank you to the Government of Canada for funding the Cost of Inaction Tool And thank you all for listening. Now I want to invite my colleague Sakshi Jain, who led the development of the tool, to give a live demonstration of the new tool. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Just before I start, I want to confirm if my screen is visible. Dylan, can you
Yes,
see it?
the screen is
Awesome.
visible. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So as Dylan mentioned, the link that he shared in his PowerPoint, and we will also drop it in the chat, will take you to this page. This is the landing page of the Cost of Inaction tool, and it's available on Nutrition International's website. Once you get to the landing page, there's a little bit of context about the tool itself. This is the link that will take us to the tool, some global findings, a little bit more context, and then there's some relevant resources here that Dylan mentioned in his presentation as well. So things like the manuscript that was published yesterday, as well as some regional briefs that we've created, and some other relevant resources from the WHO and the World Bank. In order to access the tool, you simply have to click into this link here, and this window will open up. So by default, we will be seeing the global cost of inaction. So here you get some top line statistics on the stunting, low birth weight, anemia situation, basically. So you'll see the annual economic cost, the new cases per year, and the prevalence rates, as well as the total economic cost. So as Dylan mentioned, the global cost is 761 billion. Now, say someone's interested in looking at the global cost, but for a region. So we have two drop downs here. One, this is the disease burden drop down. So inaction is kind of like a summary where we are able to see all of the different disease burdens at the same time. And then we obviously can choose stunting, low birth weight, and anemia as we see fit. The other drop down is for the different regions and countries. So we have World Bank regional groups. We also have World Bank economic groups like income groups, a couple of the continents in here, the economic groupings right here, and country level data as well. So say, for example, I'm interested in sub-Saharan Africa, just learning about the overall cost of inaction. All I have to do is choose sub-Saharan Africa and then click that apply button. And it'll give me a quick snapshot of the undernutrition situation in sub-Saharan Africa. Then if I'm interested in learning more about one of these, so say stunting, for example, I can either click into this arrow here, or I can pick stunting from this dropdown and click the apply button as I showed before. So once we do that, this will give us a little bit more information than just the key stats. So we'll still see the economic costs. The cost is a percentage of total income, but we'll also see indicators such as the deaths per year, the IQ points lost per year, school years lost per year, etc. We will also see this subsection here. So there's a profile and trend section, which will give us a sense of what the prevalence of stunting in the region was in 2012. And we've used 2012 as like a baseline just to align with the WHA targets as well, and what the most recent prevalence rate looks like, as well as it'll give us a sense of what the total annual cases are, which we've seen before, and what the total number of cases in general in children under 5 are in the region. There's also a link to the WHA target tool, as well as a bit more context on the definition of stunting and the effect size that we use for IQ points and school years lost. So that's a regional example. Now, if I'm interested in learning more about a country, so say, for example, Bangladesh, I pick Bangladesh from my dropdown and I say, I'm interested in low birth weight. So I pick both of those and I click on apply. Here, it will generate the results for Bangladesh now. There's a bit more information here. So the continent, the income level that this country belongs to. Similarly to Sub-Saharan Africa, it will still show us the output indicator. So the economic cost, the GNI, percentage of GNI, the deaths per year, and the human capital losses per year. In addition, only for country level results, we also have ranking available. So here you can see that this also gives us regional and global ranking in this particular, for this particular disease burden. So the tool will tell us that Bangladesh has the highest prevalence of low birth weight in South Asia out of 8 countries, as well as the second highest in the world out of 200 countries. And then the rest of the information is similar as before, so the WHA target and the low birth weight context and definition. So these are some of the key features of the tool. There's 2 more that I would like to show very quickly. So say, for example, someone like Monsieur Pont is interested in knowing the results, but in French. So all you have to do is, I have picked Senegal here as a country. You have low birth weight in Senegal. All you have to go is go up here and toggle this button, and the results would be available in French as well. And if someone is interested in just printing the results really quickly, then there's a print function right up there, and it should give you the ability to print your results fairly quickly in an easily understandable format. So we really hope that the tool is easy to use, and I really encourage everybody to try test out the tool when they have the chance. I will put the link to the tool and the publication in the chat shortly as well. We really hope you explore. Thank you. That's all from my end. Back to you, Leona.
Thank you so much, Sakshi. So as Sakshi had said, the link is pinned in the Q&A function. So please have a look, bookmark it, play around with it. And our team is on hand to help you with any questions you might have to navigate the tool. The purpose of this launch is really that this is now a public good. And we want to use this tool and help our partners and all the audience present this evening to really use this tool to galvanize more support and more financing for nutrition. We can't do it alone, and we're very, very happy to help with anyone who might need a demo on this. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Vivian Onano, an award-winning social entrepreneur and founder director of the Leading Light Initiative. Ms. Onano, Dylan spoke about the cost of inaction for education outcomes, and I know that your work focuses on Africa's youth and particularly helping African youth develop their fullest potential. As we know, nutrition is a key element for that. But I want to know, from your point of view, how the WHA targets are relevant for youth empowerment, education, and productivity, and how can we better link nutrition to education and youth agendas? Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Leona, for the question. Distinguished guests, fellow nutrition advocates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. As introduced, my name is Vivian Onano, and I'm the founder and director of Leading Light Initiative. I'm truly honored to be part of today's event organized by Nutrition International to bring all of us around the table to emphasize the urgency to invest in nutrition and realign our efforts around the World Health Assembly Global Nutrition Targets. At a time like this, when our world is facing multiple crises, we see that nutrition is being put in the back burner, and it is our collective duty to ensure that we bring it to the top of the agenda. Nutrition cuts across the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's why it's imperative to prioritize it and create a sense of urgency. If we are not to leave anyone behind. As they say, data is the new currency. And for us to be able to push for inclusive progress in the nutrition space, we need data that is local, easily accessible, and digestible by many, so as to hold our leaders and ourselves accountable. And that is exactly what Dylan and Sakshi has shown us using this impressive Cost of Inaction Tool that they've built. This kind of innovation in the nutrition space is a powerful tool for local advocates like myself to use for telling relatable stories on how nutrition cuts across health, nutrition cuts across gender equality, nutrition cuts across economic productivity, and also engage both policymakers and grassroots leaders in the fight to eradicate malnutrition. Quite often, it is difficult to convince local or country leaders when the data presented is too broad. When you're talking about continental data, you go to a local chief, you're talking about an area like where I come from in Kisumu. So you're talking about Kisumu, but you're giving them data for Africa or you're giving them global data. It's really hard for them to pin down where they need to make that investment and how that translates to quick wins for them. I mean, as Joel said, the addressing nutrition is also a political issue, right? So when you want to prioritize nutrition, you want to be able to communicate it in a way that the people themselves can understand the progress that you're making and the impact that you're making in their lives. But when the data is very broad, sometimes it really makes it hard for these leaders to understand the key areas when you're addressing malnutrition, where should you prioritize for you to be able to have those quick wins? But using the Cost of Inaction Tool that has been shared with us today, we are able to get the message home faster and also have clarity on areas of prioritization. And across the continent right now, we are seeing waves of young people holding their leaders accountable and demanding for investments in their well-being. And there's no better investment than investment in nutrition, because investing in nutrition is a smart move, and the economic gains are tangible and can easily be communicated to the masses in a way that is easily understandable. And also, when you invest in nutrition, we're talking about human life. We're not just talking about numbers and figures, but we're talking at the end of the day about human lives. It's about you, it's about me, it's about all these voices that we represent on the ground. And that's why I think this tool, the Cost of Inaction Tool, is going to be very, very important for local advocates at the grassroots level, for policymakers, for government leaders, for even friends outside of the nutrition space, because we cannot continue just talking to ourselves, but we also need to build allies in different sectors to join us in this push to ensure that nutrition continues to be at the top front when we're prioritizing investments. Because as I said, right now we're going to UNGA, and there's a lot of conversations around the Future Summit, but it's all about security and all these big issues. But they don't realize that addressing nutrition is also addressing a security issue on the continent, more so with the rising migration as lack of because of climate change, but also because of lack of proper nutrition. People are forced to move places, and this is a security issue that needs to be addressed. So nutrition is really at the center of this dialogue and conversations that we are having right now. But also, it's important for us to put the resources where our mouths are. We can't just keep talking and having conversations, but we need to put those investments that transforms people's lives, because at the end of the day, as I said, we're talking about human lives. These global nutrition targets are also part of Africa's agenda. The African Union has prioritized nutrition. 2022 was the year of nutrition, and we have seen great focus on addressing malnutrition, particularly in adolescent girls, through a continental framework, working hand in hand with organizations such as Nutrition International to provide the technical support to drive policy, advocacy, and investments. The negative effects that forms of malnutrition like anemia can have on education, productivity, and earning capacity can hold girls and women back from their highest potential, further trapping them and their future generation in an intergenerational cycle of gender inequality and poverty. And anemia in adolescent girls and women costs the African continent approximately $9.4 billion a year. It has never been more clear that inaction on nutrition is costing Africa dearly. In Africa, 127 million IQ points are lost every year due to stunting. This is productivity that we are losing when you look at it like that. Given that Africa is home to more than 250 million adolescents, the largest cohort of youth, investment in their well-being, which starts with access to proper nutrition, is important for Africa's growth and productivity. For us to fully harness the demographic dividend, it's imperative that this cohort of young people are healthy, well-nourished, and empowered. It is also critical that all stakeholders prioritize nutrition-smart investment, because addressing malnutrition requires a cross-sectoral approach, given its impact on health, education, peace and security, economic productivity, and eradicating poverty. Good nutrition at the right time for Africa's infants and children has the power to affect the trajectory of their lives forever, and in time, impacting the role that they will play in their communities and countries as adults. As we continue to have these key moments to realign and unite behind common targets, let us remember that we are talking about human lives that continue to be impacted greatly on a daily basis by lack of concerted action to end one of the biggest sources of preventable suffering on our planet, which is malnutrition. This is a time when we have to rally everyone. Local, regional, continental, global efforts matter, because we are stronger together, and we need to all unite behind the World Health Assembly Global Nutrition Targets to ensure that malnutrition is eradicated once and for all. And we will not be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals if we do not prioritize and invest in nutrition. Thank you, Leona.
Thank you so much, Vivian, for those remarks and that powerful statement that this is not just numbers on a screen. This is actually human lives we're talking about. And I really love what you said, that data is the new currency. Dylan said earlier in his presentation that data tells a story, and I think we need to tell a new story to the world using this new cost of inaction tool as an advocacy tool, like you said, to really show governments what they are being costed on. It feels egregious to me that currently investments in nutrition are minimal compared to the massive scale of the problem, with nutrition-specific spending accounting for less than 1% of overseas development assistance, even though that malnutrition contributes to 45% of all deaths of children under age 5. And as you said, there is no better investment in our youth and in our planet and sustainable development agenda than investing in nutrition. Thank you so much once again. We at Nutrition International, like you, Vivian, strongly believe the right nutrition at the right time builds the capacity to dream, fuels the power to achieve, and lays the foundation upon which we can build a better world, starting with the next generation, our youth. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Francesco Branca, Director of the Department of Nutrition and Food Safety at the World Health Organization. Dr. Branca, my question to you is, what will it take to deliver the WHA targets from a financing, political will, and policy perspective? And what are the key important milestones this year going forward to 2025 and beyond? Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Leona. And let me first start by thanking Nutrition International for having convened this discussion and above all for having developed such an important and useful tool that will highlight what we are missing, what opportunities to development are missed if the nutrition targets are not met, and if malnutrition is still going to be allowed to play this detrimental role to people's health and development. So the WHA targets were established back in 2012, really with the idea of creating an alignment among the nutrition actors on what should be the priorities and what also should be the scope of action. Undernutrition, obesity, micronutrient deficiencies, all these multiple forms of malnutrition which we've been able to document, now coming together in many circumstances and actually often being entangled in one another. So the real purpose of the target was to say, this is where we as a nutrition community need to align, and this is what we need to prioritize. So the scope of the work. And then the other aspect was, of course, creating an accountability, having really a metrics to measure the progress towards the development of the nutrition agenda. Did we do progress? We actually did progress in many areas. If it had been for the COVID, we would have been much better off with stunting reduction. But we have to acknowledge there has been important reduction in stunting rates and in the numbers of children affected by stunting. Breastfeeding, it's a success story. This is probably the only target that is going to be achieved by the year 2025, almost reaching the target of having half of the children under 6 months exclusively breastfed. But as you say, Leona, how can we harness this focus now, and how can we move beyond 2025? So on the one hand, trying to correct the aim and trying to be better at achieving those targets on which we have not been able to make progress. On the other hand, going beyond and increasing the level of ambition. So we have been working on this together with partners, and already a few years ago we developed a paper in which we were trying to reflect on this and say, actually, the level of achievement has been different. There have been some great achievers. There have been countries who have really made well, have really been on track on the achievement of the targets. How did they do that? And can we actually base global progress on the achievement of the best? So we try to, again, look at the level of ambition of the targets. I mean, the targets have been designed to be realistic. We don't want to, yes, we need to be ambitious, and we need to bring to zero the level of malnutrition. That would be, of course, the ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals. But in concrete, what does it mean? And can we actually help countries make realistic estimates at what they need to do and what they can achieve? And so that realism has been checked again, looking at what has happened basically in 10 years of work in the nutrition community. And so the new proposal for the extension of the target between 2025 and 2030 to really align the agenda to the Sustainable Development Goals includes a bit that reality check. So we believe we can do better on breastfeeding. We can go beyond 50%. We believe we can do better in obesity reduction, but probably the areas where the progress has been lowest, anemia and low birth weight, will need to stay at the same level. So this is in terms of the definition of the targets. And we ran a consultation with member states and partners, and there's broad acceptance to the idea that, yes, we need to align to the 2030 agenda and extend for the next 5 years the targets. We need to adjust the level of ambition. But then the question comes, how do we do that? And I think that's really the question you asked me, and that's the big question that is also going to be addressed in the two important summits we're going to go through in the next few months. One is the SUN Global Gathering, where the Scaling Up Nutrition movement countries have really put all their efforts in achieving those targets. So can they then give us somehow the indication of what could be the ways to accelerate? And the other aspect is, the other summit is, of course, the Nutrition for Growth Summit. We have seen how the Nutrition for Growth experience has really rallied enormous amount of resources, both financial and political, and we have all the trust that the French government will generate all the energy to actually help acceleration on the achievement of the targets. So what can we do? And we actually did try to say, maybe we could have some operational targets. Maybe we can be a bit more concrete about what it takes to, for example, reduce stunting. What are the areas that need to be considered with greatest priority? So we have made a suggestion there. And, things come out as we want to have better dietary diversity to reduce stunting and wasting. We want to have better coverage of supplementation policies. We want to have adequate staple food fortification policies. We want to have nutrition embedded in essential nutrition actions and iron and folic acid supplement delivered through antenatal care visits to all women. We want to have better counseling on nutrition. We want to have baby-friendly hospital initiative really reaching all children. We want to have greater meal frequency for children. We want to have the treatment of wasting really reaching all the children who need. So some ideas there to prioritize and to establish operational targets so that the development actors and the donors might say, okay, this is where we want to go. So that's a proposal. We believe that this is going to be an important discussion at the SUN Global Gathering. Priorities need to help without leaving behind the important areas of work. These are genuinely multi-pronged strategies and multi-sectoral approaches. But a more targeted, perhaps, delivery of programs and policies is the first element of this acceleration. The second element is, of course, having adequate resources to do this. And I think the work that Nutrition International has done with the cost of inaction tool is going to be a way to explain, basically create investment cases, explain why we need to make this investment. Of course, the World Bank costing tool will also be important to somehow model the impact of the establishment of certain programs. We believe that we need to build the work on the successes, and there are a number of important success stories, new ways to deliver programs. Just to quote some, the incredible success that countries like Ethiopia and Kenya have had in training community health workers and asking them to deliver nutrition interventions. Incredible success that we can build on. Our capacity to work both on prevention and management of wasting. The fact that we have a framework for action on anemia, which is not only looking at nutrition, but is looking at integrated delivery of services. So we have a number of important experiences on which we can build. So I look forward to working with you in this process. Of course, the Sun Global Gardening will be an opportunity. There are some interesting working groups, and we look forward to discussing you in that context. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Branca. And I think it's very important what you said, that it's not all doom and gloom for the nutrition community, that there has been success stories and very positive strides in getting nutrition on the global agenda and conversation. And we're all quite ambitious here in wanting it to end with, no lives lost at all. And I think that is the right objective to work towards. But I really do hear your remarks on celebrating what this community, the audience here watching, has already achieved in the short span of time, and that message of hope and on the breastfeeding target, and like you said, these realistic targets. So thank you for that. And we in the nutrition community will make sure we stand together at the key moments you've outlined to drive forward the global agenda on nutrition under these WHA targets. Finally, I'd like to introduce our last speaker, Monsieur Brieux-Pont, France's Special Envoy and Secretary General for the upcoming Nutrition for Growth Summit in 2025, next year in Paris, France. And these are one of the key moments, as Dr. Branca has said, that will really determine the trajectory of where we are with the WHA targets. So, Monsieur Pont, my question to you is, how do you think France can use N4G to bring the nutrition community together to make aligned financial commitments on nutrition? Over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Liana, for having me. Thank you very much, Nutrition International, for having me with you today. Thank you to Francesco, to Joel, Dylan, and Vivian for the very inspiring points. And congratulations for the Cost of Inaction tool, which is, I think, extremely useful for advocacy purposes as we captain our way towards the N4G summit. I've been given 10 minutes. I'll try to stick to that. Keep in mind that when I have finished speaking, 600 people will be dead of starvation or of pathologies which are related to hunger. We know that nutrition still causes half of the death of the children worldwide, and 4 people dying every 4 seconds. That's more than 20,000 people dead per day, which is plainly unacceptable, and that calls for immediate action by the international community. It should be of foremost priority in everyone's agenda, every nation's agenda, yet it struggles to become a central topic of development. And that is something that fosters some form of anger and a sense of revolt. We know that COVID-19, climate change, and conflicts are worsening, have worsened the global malnutrition in its all forms, and reversing a decade of efforts and progress. Today, almost 150 million children under 5 are stunted. 45 million are wasted and frail, 37 million are overweight. Women also, we know about the gender gap. They are heavily impacted by nutrition. Half of women between 15 and 49 years old suffer from anemia. Many countries are struggling with a triple burden of malnutrition, infectious and chronic diseases, destabilizing health systems, and of course, slowing economic growth. So you see that the general situation is very grim. It falls to France as host of the Olympic and Paralympic Games to organize the next N4G summit. We are very excited about that, but also very aware of the burden that it represents in terms of mission, in terms of objectives, because we are getting closer to the 2030 deadline. And we know that very realistically, it is very hard for us to think that we are going to get there to the 2030 development goals and that we can achieve them. Does that mean that we have to stop? No, I'm not saying that because we're an Olympic country, but we need to try to deliver. We need to try to make a sort of to produce results and then see in 2030 what's gone wrong, why didn't we achieve, where could we have been more successful, and how can we improve the capacity of the international community. In March 25, we will get together, so March 27 and 28, the international community of nutrition. And in the tradition of French diplomacy, we want this summit to be open. We want it to be open to civil society. We want to be open to governments, of course, but also businesses, development agencies, philanthropies, the academia, and with one goal, which is to strengthen collective action against malnutrition. We want N4G to be to raise political and financial commitments around nutrition. We need strong political leadership. It's essential to prioritize nutrition among nations. But we also want to make a message come through. It's everyone's matter. Malnutrition is impacting every single country in the world, and we all need to get things moving as soon as possible. This is not the struggle of only developing countries. It's a global issue. It affects both rich and poor nations, and to change this, we believe we need to revamp our approach to malnutrition and food systems. When I was appointed as Secretary General of the next N4G summit, I'm not an expert on nutrition, so I had to try to understand and try to understand also the expertise and the general context of all this. And what I realized is that N4G was presented to me as sort of, it's a tradition, but no, apologies, this is not a tradition. It's a great idea, but something that started in 2013 is not a tradition. You have many other traditions in the world, like Swiss democracy, French cuisine, or UN bureaucracy, plenty of things, but N4G, we need to make it become a tradition. So that is our very first goal. Our commitment is trying to make it a tradition. So we've created a troika with the United States and Japan in order to bring Australia afterwards, because Brisbane gets the Olympics in 2032, and then who knows? We know that several nations are bidding for the Olympics. That could be India, that could be Germany, that could be Turkey, that could be Chile, or Saudi Arabia in 2036. We want to put nutrition at the core, at the very center of sustainable development policies. We want it to become a doctrine, a full-fledged development policy accepted by all countries, with dedicated business units inside governments, so that nutrition stops to be the orphan of all development policies, with sometimes a missing father agriculture, missing mother health. We need business units that are in charge with identified point of contacts, so that governments can coordinate and can advance together fighting this scourge. So continuity and also maintaining a high level of political and financial engagement for nutrition. We believe that the the role of multilateral development banks is key. When I look at Tokyo, which gathered 42.6 billion US dollars in commitments, that is not high. That is astronomically high. It makes you humble, and it is. I can tell you, it takes a lot to make a Frenchman humble, but we have this challenge, and when we look at Tokyo, which was great, but I think that a few stones have been left unturned, and those are perhaps the development banks that we have to challenge and ask them to bring commitments and make more funds available for nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive actions. Because we know that nutrition development policy is effective. It is actually the most effective development policy with the greatest return on investment rate, factor 16 on average, but it can get up to 35 or 53 in some countries. And we know that can be very interesting for banks. We know also that it impacts 11 out of 17 SDGs. So it makes a lot of a difference when you are trying to achieve the 2030 agenda SDGs. It is cross-sectorial. We know it impacts a lot of areas in terms of development, and we want this summit to address the many ways that nutrition can be addressed, like through gender, through sustainable food systems, through crisis resilience, health, including social protection, but also it was mentioned by one of my friends here, innovation, artificial intelligence, access to data is key. And we also need to deal with finance and accountability. And I want to quote my dear friend from the World Bank, Mira Shekhar, who says frequently, we don't want more money for nutrition, we want more nutrition for money. So this is our vision. We also want people to be aware that nutrition works. So we are trying to gather financial support for a massive worldwide campaign to help the taxpayer, everyone out there, to understand that nutrition is not only about food labeling and the cool apps that your kids can use at the local supermarket to scan barcodes and see what they are going to eat is good or not. That's cool, actually. But what we know, to let the public know, is that what we need to let the public know is that development is worth investing in, and taxpayer gets value for money, and it helps nations build on their resilience, and then we can run the extra mile with them in terms of development by developing more ambitious objectives afterwards. So see you everyone in every place. We are going to beat the drum, be it at the Yanga, be it at the World Bank, be it at the Sun Global Gathering. We'll be there. We count on you to support us, to make sure nutrition is enshrined in development policies, is endorsed by everyone, because our point is we don't want only nutrition for growth, we want nutrition for good. Thank you. Over to you, Leona.
Thank you so much, Monsieur. Beaucoup, Monsieur. We're all looking forward to the M4G Summit under your excellent leadership, and I really look forward to your vision of enshrining it as a new tradition and putting nutrition at the core of sustainable development rather than the orphan of development policies as it's been in the past. Thank you so much for your guidance for M4G, and we look forward to seeing you there. Now I'd like to pass it back to Joel Spicer, President and CEO of Nutrition International, for concluding remarks for today's event. Over to you, Joel.
Great. Thank you, Leona. And I just want to thank all speakers for their incredibly dynamic remarks and for the sense of growing hope and encouragement and momentum that is coming out of this conversation. Very, very briefly, with Vivian, we talked about the connectedness of nutrition. She talked about how the Cost of Inaction Tool was powerful for local advocates because it is adapted for local use. And therefore, it's clear from this conversation that tools like the Cost of Inaction Tool are not just a technical tool, they're a political tool. As the old saying goes, any tool is a weapon if you hold it correctly. And we want this to be something that responds to the call that WHA made for people to lean in and support the Nutrition for Growth process. And WHA, I think you can count on our support at Nutrition International, but the support of everyone here for that as well. WHA made the point about urgency, the urgency of malnutrition. And that's something that we have to take forward as well and focus like a laser on making meaningful progress for people that are affected right now. I think as an asterisk, Priok also put the point on the multilateral development banks as an untapped source of additional financing. And we certainly agree. And so efforts to target them at the upcoming Nutrition for Growth Summit so they can lean in more, very, very welcome. So I think if Vivian talked about the connectedness of nutrition to many other things, right? Saying that the global nutrition targets aren't just about nutrition, they're a marker of progress on gender equality, on education, and on economic growth. Then Francesco talked about the fact that progress is possible. He pointed to successes. While there is a steep hill to climb ahead of us, there is much more that we can do, particularly if we focus on collective action and areas where we can move the needle. I think I want to leave you with one quick story. We were very lucky several weeks ago to have a visit to our headquarters from King Letsie III, the King of Lesotho, but the Africa Union nutrition champion. And we were able to ask him several questions. One was, what keeps you awake at night as the AU nutrition champion? And he said, the number of children that are still dying preventably. That's one of the things that keeps him up. We also asked him if he had one message for world leaders and for country leaders, what would it be? And he said, it would be to put nutrition as their top development priority. We also asked if he had one message for the nutrition community, what message would he wish to share with us? And there he said, you know, I think we have to recall that nutrition sometimes is a long game, and don't give up. Thank you for all the work you are doing. Act with urgency. People are depending on you, but be hopeful because change is possible. So let's make that change happen. I want to thank all of you who have joined this webinar and shared your time with us. Thank you from all of us here. I want to thank the Nutrition International team, and I want to especially thank the speakers that we had here today with us, Vivian, Briuk, and Francesco. I hope this leaves you with a sense of encouragement, a sense of hope about what's possible on the road ahead, and a sense that we have to move forward with focus and great urgency. Thanks to all of you. See you on the road ahead.
Thank you so much, Joel. And once again, thank you to all of today's speakers for your incredible insights and inspiring remarks. We're truly galvanized and motivated by your messages of hope and determination and your suggestions for the way forward. I'd like to request all speakers to please turn on your videos and wave so we can give you a round of applause for being on our panel today. I'd also like to say congratulations once again to the Health and Economics team at Nutrition International on the launch of the new Cost of Inaction Tool that will empower governments, donors, and other stakeholders to make the case for increased nutrition investments. For further support, including demonstrations and technical assistance, please reach out to our team at healthecon@nutritioninternational.org. I'll spell that out. It's health, econ at nutritionintl.org. So once again, healthecon at nutritionintl.org. We'll be more than happy to assist you with any inquiries. We are incredibly grateful as well to the Government of Canada for their ongoing support of Nutrition International and their support in financing the development of this new Cost of Inaction tool. I would like to just conclude by saying that the objective of today's event was to create momentum and alignment within the nutrition community, particularly around the renewal of the WHA Global Targets. I think you would all agree that we have achieved that today and more. Now that we know what our inaction on malnutrition is costing us quantitatively, and we can measure it. We can no longer afford to lag behind on the global nutrition targets. It's truly time to end malnutrition for good. And as Vivian Onano said, this is about human lives. This is not just about data and statistics. So with that, I conclude today's webinar. Thank you so much for your attention and your commitment to helping us end global malnutrition. Take care. Bye-bye.